Hi, and welcome back to the channel for the haunting horror. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment before viewing. Enjoy your viewing. The taxi driver grunted, snapping me out of my usual post-work coma. Here you go, Sahib. I squinted at the deserted street, the familiar neon glow of the late-night pharmacy across the road, the only splash of color in the inky blackness. 2:14 a.m., the harsh red numbers on my phone screen mocked my exhaustion. Another night surviving the relentless drone of customer service calls at the call center. Another night in the cramped, noisy hostel room reserved for perpetually jet-lagged boys on business trips. Are you sure this is it? I asked, the unease gnawing at the edges of my sleepiness amplifying. The driver, a wiry man with a perpetually chewed-down toothpick, glanced back at me with amusement. This is Ashok Nagar, Sahib. You sat near the temple, didn't you? Yes, I mumbled, fumbling for my wallet. Ashok Nagar, my neighborhood, was usually a cacophony of honking rickshaws and barking stray dogs. Tonight, an unnatural silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the rhythmic click-clack of the driver's flip-flops against the pavement. That'll be 320 rupees, the driver announced, impatience edging into his voice. I paid him quickly, the weight of the silence pressing down on me. Pulling out my phone, I used it as a makeshift flashlight, the meager beam bouncing off the deserted street vendor's metal shutters. With each step, the unease morphed into a cold dread that coiled in my gut. The temple, usually bathed in a soft golden glow, stood shrouded in darkness. Its large, ornate gates remained shut, a stark contrast to the usual all-night accessibility. Even the stray dogs, a constant presence in our neighborhood, were absent. I reached our hostel's gate, a flimsy metal structure that offered little security. As I fumbled with my key, a low growl rumbled from the alleyway behind the hostel. My heart lurched. It wasn't a dog's growl. It was deeper, more guttural, filled with a primal hunger. Rahul! I called out, my voice trembling slightly. Rahul, the grumpy night watchman, often dozed off in a rickety chair by the gate, his snores a comforting presence at night. Silence. Only the growl intensified, accompanied by a rhythmic thumping noise like something heavy scraping against the wall. Panic clawed its way up my throat. I shoved the gate open, the rusted hinges screeching a jarring protest. The thumping grew louder, the growl rising to a crescendo. Fear propelled me towards the hostel entrance, the source of the noise echoing from deeper within the alleyway. Rahul! Open up, I screamed, slamming my fist against the worn wooden door. It held firm. A cold sweat plastered itself to my skin. Where was Rahul? The pounding on the hostel door echoed like a drumbeat in the suffocating silence. My phone light, the only source of illumination, danced frantically across the peeling paint, highlighting the desperation etched on my face. Anyone in there? I yelled, my voice hoarse. My earlier exhaustion had vanished, replaced by a primal urge to get inside. Another guttural growl erupted from the alleyway, closer this time, followed by a chorus of frantic barking. Suddenly, a flurry of movement caught my eye. A pack of stray dogs, usually indifferent to me, materialized from the shadows across the street. They weren't barking at each other, but at something behind me, their fur bristling, bodies tense. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I slowly turned, the phone light illuminating a scene that froze my blood. The alleyway entrance, usually overflowing with overflowing garbage, was spotless. Not a single scrap remained. An unsettling chill emanated from within, a stark contrast to the already oppressive night air. The barking intensified, turning into a desperate symphony of growls. The dogs, as one, lunged towards the alleyway, only to screech to a halt at the edge. They paced back and forth, growling and snapping at the unseen presence. "Don't go in there," a raspy voice rasped from behind me. I spun around, nearly dropping my phone in shock. An old woman, shrouded in a tattered sari, stood by the gate, her cloudy eyes fixed on the alleyway. "Who are you?" I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. She chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Amma, they call me. I've lived here longer than the buildings themselves." "What's happening?" I blurted out, desperate for answers. "Why are the dogs acting so strange?" Amma's gaze remained fixed on the alleyway. "Sometimes," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "things come crawling out from the places between. Things with a hunger that can't be satiated." "What things?" I pressed, my fear warring with a morbid curiosity. Amma turned a frail hand towards me, her face, etched with wrinkles, contorted into a grim mask. "Don't worry about what, young one. Worry about keeping it out." With that, she shuffled away, disappearing into the labyrinthine alleyways behind the hostel. Her cryptic words hung heavy in the air, adding another layer to my burgeoning terror. The barking continued, a desperate plea against the unseen threat. I glanced back at the hostel door. Rahul wouldn't wake up anytime soon. It was up to me to get inside, to find another way in, before whatever lurked in the alley made its way to me. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, pushing aside the remnants of exhaustion. Amma's words, "Things come crawling out from the places between," echoed in my mind, offering no comfort but fueling my frantic search for an entrance. The hostel building, usually a noisy testament to the lives crammed within, was eerily silent. Even through the meager light of my phone, I could see the windows on the ground floor, usually illuminated by flickering tube lights, were dark. Panic clawed at my throat. Where was everyone? Had they heard the growls, witnessed the freakishly clean alleyway, or were they worse, victims of whatever monstrosity lurked within? The barking outside had morphed into a desperate whimper, a chilling testament to the dog's fate. I swallowed hard, pushing the image of their mangled bodies out of my mind. I needed to act before the thing turned its attention to me. The hostel's perimeter wall, a rickety construction of brick and rusty corrugated metal, offered a flicker of hope. Scaling it wouldn't be easy, but it seemed like the only way in. I scanned the wall, finding a handhold on a protruding brick just above my head. Just as I was about to grab it, a voice, shaky but determined, startled me. "Don't." I whipped around, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. A young man, maybe barely out of his teens, peeked from behind the bolted metal door of a tiny shop, tucked away in a corner of the building. His eyes, wide with fear, mirrored my own. "Who are you?" I rasped, relieved to see another human being. "Ravi," he whispered, his voice barely a squeak. "I work at the cigarette shop. What's happening?" I took a shaky breath, unsure how much to tell him. "Something's in the alleyway," I finally answered. "It's dangerous." "Dangerous?" Ravi repeated, his voice trembling. "How dangerous?" Before I could answer, a bone-chilling shriek erupted from the depths of the alleyway. It wasn't the guttural growl of the creature, but a human scream filled with raw terror and a growing sense of hopelessness. Ravi gasped, his grip tightening on the door handle. That's Mr. Gupta," he whispered, his voice choked with tears. Mr. Gupta, the owner of the little tea stall across the street, was a kind old man, a familiar face in the neighborhood. The scream cut off abruptly, followed by a sickening thud. My stomach lurched. We were both too afraid to speak, the silence broken only by the ragged breaths escaping our lips. "We need to get inside," I exclaimed, a newfound urgency fueling my voice. "The thing is going to come for us next." Ravi nodded mutely, his face pale in the dim light. There was no time for questions. We needed to find a way into the hostel, and fast. My gaze landed on the rickety metal wall again. "Boost me up," I instructed Ravi, my voice tight with determination. "Are you sure about this?" Ravi whimpered, his voice barely a whisper. We were huddled beneath the meager overhang of the cigarette shop's awning, the cacophony of the city replaced by an unnerving stillness. Only the faint metallic tang of blood, a grim reminder of Mr. Gupta's fate, hung heavy in the air. "No," I admitted, my voice a low growl. But scaling the wall was our only option. The hostel door remained firmly shut, and with Rahul incapacitated, there was no telling when or if he'd wake up. "Here," Ravi fumbled in his pocket, pulling out a crumpled pack of cigarettes. He extracted a single stick, his hands shaking, and offered it to me. "Smoke?" he asked, his voice barely audible. I hesitated for a moment, then took the cigarette, offering him a shaky smile. "Might as well," I muttered, lighting it with a flickering flame from my phone. The acrid smoke stung my throat, but it offered a brief sense of normalcy amidst the unfolding nightmare. "You first," I instructed, taking a long drag. Ravi shook his head vehemently. "No way. You're closer to the wall. Besides, I'm lighter." There wasn't time to argue. I took another drag, the burning ember casting an ephemeral glow on my face, and tossed the half-smoked cigarette to the ground, grinding it out with my shoe. "All right," I sighed, stepping forward. "Boost me up." Ravi positioned himself beneath the protruding brick, his back hunched. I hoisted myself onto his shoulders, feeling the flimsy metal groan under my weight. "Ready?" I asked, gripping the brake with one hand, the other clutching my phone for light. "Go," Ravi yelled, his voice surprisingly strong. Using a burst of adrenaline, I pulled myself onto the wall, the rusted metal biting into my palms. Hauling myself up, I reached the top, wincing as a shard of metal pierced my shirt. Almost there, I yelled back down, my voice echoing in the deserted street. The hostel's rooftop was a flat expanse of cracked concrete, dotted with overflowing water tanks and precariously balanced laundry lines. Using the pipes and rickety TV antenna as makeshift handholds, I scrambled across the uneven surface. Finally, I reached the fire escape leading down to the back entrance of the hostel. Relief washed over me, momentarily erasing the terror gnawing at my insides. "Ravi, I made it," I shouted down, my voice hoarse with exertion. A moment later, a head popped up from behind the shop's awning. Relief flooded his face. "You're in. Good," he yelled back, his voice laced with a newfound determination. "Stay there," I instructed. "I'll open the door from the inside." Reaching the rusted fire escape, I started my descent, every creak and groan sending shivers down my spine. The back door, usually left ajar for ventilation, was thankfully unlocked. I flung it open, the stale air of the hostel greeting me like a long-lost friend. "Ravi, come in," I yelled, slamming the door shut behind me and fumbling for the heavy iron bolt. The stale, recycled air of the hostel felt suffocating after the night's chill, but it was a welcome change from the unseen terror lurking outside. Slamming the heavy metal door shut, I fumbled with the rusty deadbolt, the metallic screech echoing through the silent building. "Ravi, come on," I shouted, my voice echoing off the bare walls. A tense silence followed, punctuated only by the pounding of my heart against my ribs. "Ravi!" I called again, a sliver of fear creeping back into my voice. Had he changed his mind? Had the creature gotten to him? Just as despair threatened to consume me, a frantic scratching noise erupted from the metal fire escape outside. Relief washed over me, momentarily erasing the terror clinging to me like a shroud. "Hold on!" I yelled, throwing the deadbolt and yanking the door open. Ravi tumbled through the doorway, landing in a heap on the warm linoleum floor. He scrambled to his feet, his eyes wide with terror. "What took you so long?" I hissed, slamming the door shut behind him with a resounding clang. I tripped," Ravi stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. He pointed a shaky finger towards the fire escape. "There's something on the roof." My blood ran cold. The creature wasn't done yet. It had followed us. Panic threatened to paralyze me, but the primal urge to survive propelled me forward. "We need to find Rahul," I rasped, my voice tight with fear. Rahul, the grumpy night watchman, despite his flaws, was our only hope. He knew the hostel like the back of his hand. There had to be a safe place, a hidden room maybe, where we could wait this out. "Rahul's room is on the ground floor, right next to the reception," Ravi whispered, his voice barely audible. The reception area, a cavernous space dominated by a dusty couch and a perpetually malfunctioning ceiling fan, was deserted. The key to Rahul's room usually hung on a rusty nail behind the counter. My hand trembled as I reached for it, the metal cold and unyielding against my clammy skin. "Here," I muttered, shoving the key into Ravi's hand. "You open it. I'll check the corridors." We both knew it was a flimsy plan, a desperate attempt at some semblance of control. The silence in the hostel was broken only by the ragged gasps of our breaths. Reaching the end of the corridor, I cast a nervous glance down the dimly lit hallway. Everything looked the same, the rows of identical doors like silent sentinels guarding their secrets. But something felt different, an unseen presence that prickled the hairs on the back of my neck. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed from behind me. It wasn't Ravi's scream. It was a woman's scream filled with raw terror and a growing sense of hopelessness. My heart lurched. There were other people in the hostel. The blood-curdling scream froze me in my tracks. It wasn't Ravi. It was a woman's voice, raw with terror, echoing from somewhere deeper in the labyrinthine corridors of the hostel. My mind raced. There were other people here. Tourists, business travelers, caught unawares by the unfolding nightmare. Guilt gnawed at me. We'd been so focused on our own survival, we hadn't even considered others might be trapped as well. Shame battled with the primal urge to find safety, but the image of a terrified woman flashed in my mind, overriding my fear. "Ravi!" I yelled, my voice hoarse in the oppressive silence. "Stay here. I need to find her." No answer. Panic clawed at my throat. Had Ravi succumbed to the same terror that had claimed the woman and Mr. Gupta? Or worse, had the creature gotten to him? Taking a deep, shaky breath, I plunged back into the dimly lit hallway, the flickering fluorescent lights casting long shadows that danced on the walls. The scream had come from somewhere to my left, a room at the far end of the corridor. With each step, the silence pressed down on me like a physical weight. My phone light, the only source of illumination, cast an inadequate beam, barely penetrating the gloom. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the aging building, sent shivers down my spine. Reaching the room, I saw the door ajar, a sliver of darkness spilling out onto the hallway floor. The smell hit me first, a metallic tang mixed with the acrid stench of fear. My stomach lurched. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely a whisper. Silence. Then a soft whimper from within the room. Pushing the door open cautiously, I peeked inside. The room was a standard hostel fare. A single bed, a rickety chair, and a small window overlooking the deserted street. On the bed, huddled in a corner, sat a young woman, her face streaked with tears, her eyes wide with terror. "Are you all right?" I asked, my voice gentle despite the tremor running through me. The woman jumped, her scream catching in her throat. "Who are you?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I'm staying here too," I lied, not wanting to scare her further. "There's something outside. We need to stay quiet." The woman nodded mutely, her eyes never leaving the doorway. I joined her on the bed, the thin mattress offering little comfort. The silence outside was broken only by the distant, rhythmic thumping noise, a constant reminder of the unseen threat lurking in the alleyway. "My name's Priya," the woman whispered, her voice barely audible. I hesitated, then blurted out, "Raj." A lie, but it felt safer than revealing my real name. We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity, the tension in the room so thick it was almost suffocating. Just when I thought I couldn't take the silence anymore, a metallic clang echoed from the corridor, followed by a string of muttered curses. "Ravi," I whispered, hope flickering in my chest. The metallic clang sent a jolt of relief through me. "Ravi," I whispered, hope flickering in my chest like a dying ember. Priya flinched, her eyes darting towards the door. "Who's Ravi?" she croaked, her voice barely a whisper. Someone who might be able to help us," I stammered, praying Ravi was all right. The muttered curses grew louder, punctuated by the unmistakable sound of fumbling with keys. "Stay here," I instructed Priya, my voice tight with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Taking a deep breath, I crept towards the door, my hand hovering over the rusted doorknob. A string of muttered Hindi curses confirmed my suspicions. It was Ravi. "Ravi," I hissed, twisting the knob and pushing the door open a crack. Ravi stood in the hallway, his face a mask of terror. But he wasn't alone. A tall, gaunt figure loomed behind him, its silhouette barely visible in the dim light filtering in from the corridor. The creature was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Its body was a grotesque parody of a human form, all spindly limbs and knobby joints. Its skin, if you could call it that, was a sickly grey, mottled with patches of raw flesh. Two glowing red orbs burned in the darkness where its head should have been, devoid of any features like eyes or a nose. A low growl, a sound that vibrated through my bones, rumbled from its throat. It reeked of decay and something far more primal, a stench that made my stomach churn. "Get back!" Ravi screamed, shoving a metal object, a toolbox, at the creature. The toolbox clattered harmlessly to the floor, barely slowing the creature down. Fear threatened to paralyze me, but the sight of Priya huddled in the corner of the room spurred me into action. I grabbed a heavy ceramic vase from the nightstand, the only weapon within reach. "This way," I yelled, flinging the vase at the creature with all my might. The vase shattered against the creature's bony chest, spraying shards of ceramic everywhere. It roared in fury, the sound echoing through the hallway. Using the distraction, I shoved Ravi back into the room and slammed the door shut. The flimsy wood wouldn't hold for long, but it might buy us a few precious seconds. "There's a window," Priya shrieked, pointing towards the small window overlooking the deserted street. "We can climb out." Hope flickered in my chest, a fragile flame battling the encroaching darkness. The window was our only chance, a desperate gamble against a seemingly unstoppable foe. But before we could reach it, the creature slammed against the door, the hinges groaning in protest. "It's no use," Ravi cried, his voice choked with fear. "The window bars are too strong." Panic clawed at my throat. We were trapped, cornered by a creature from beyond nightmares. But just as despair threatened to consume me, a memory surfaced. Amma's words about the things coming crawling out from the places between. Places between. My gaze darted around the room, landing on the small gap between the bed frame and the wall. It was narrow, barely big enough for a small animal, but maybe. "The bed," I yelled, shoving Priya and Ravi towards it. There might be a way out through the gap. Adrenaline surged through my veins, pushing aside the suffocating terror. Amma's cryptic words, "Things come crawling out from the places between," echoed in my mind, offering a glimmer of hope. My eyes darted around the cramped room, landing on the small gap between the rickety bed frame and the wall. It was narrow, barely big enough for a cat. But maybe. "The bed," I yelled, shoving Priya and Ravi towards it. There might be a way out through the gap. Ravi's eyes widened in understanding. "Are you crazy?" he hissed, fear etched on his face. "It's too small." "We don't have a choice," I retorted, my voice laced with urgency. The creature's enraged growls grew louder, punctuated by the sickening splintering of wood as it tore into the flimsy door. Priya, her face pale but resolute, knelt beside the bed. "Help me push it," she instructed, shoving the mattress towards the wall. Together, we wrestled the heavy mattress, the stale air thick with the stench of fear and dust. With a final heave, we wedged the mattress against the wall, creating a makeshift barrier. The gap between the bed frame and the wall was still worryingly narrow, but it was our only hope. "You first, Priya," I said, my voice trembling slightly. Priya shook her head, her eyes filled with a newfound determination. "No, you go. You're smaller." "We can both fit," Ravi interjected, his voice surprisingly steady. "Look, there's a loose floorboard here. Maybe we can pry it open and create a bigger space." Hope flared in my chest. It was a risky plan, but it might just work. We scrambled for anything that could serve as a lever. A metal cone from Priya's purse, a broken piece of the shattered vase. Working frantically, we provided the loose floorboard, the creature's enraged roars a constant reminder of the urgency. Finally, with a satisfying groan, the floorboard gave way, revealing a dark, dusty crawl space beneath. It was barely big enough for one person, but it was an escape route. "Go," Ravi hissed, shoving me towards the opening. "I'll hold it off for as long as I can." "No way," I protested. The thought of leaving him behind was unbearable. "Just go," he yelled, his voice filled with a desperate courage. "Tell someone what happened. Get help." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I knew he was right. There was no time for heroics. With a final choked sob, I squeezed through the narrow opening, the rough wood scraping against my skin. The crawl space was cramped and dusty, the air thick with the smell of mildew. But for the first time that night, I felt a flicker of hope. I crawled forward, the sounds of the creature's enraged growls and Ravi's desperate shouts fading behind me. The crawl space seemed to stretch on forever, the darkness pressing down on me like a physical weight. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, a faint sliver of light appeared in the distance. With a renewed burst of energy, I pushed forward, the rough wood scraping against my raw skin. Finally, I reached the opening, the cool night air washing over me like a balm. I emerged into a narrow alleyway, the familiar neon glow of the late-night pharmacy across the street a beacon of hope. But before I could take another step, A blood-curdling scream ripped through the night, a scream filled with raw terror and a horrifying sense of finality. Tears streamed down my face as I stumbled out of the alleyway, the weight of what I had just experienced threatening to crush me. The night air felt like a slap, pulling me back from the suffocating darkness of the crawl space. Tears streamed down my face, blurring the familiar neon glow of the pharmacy across the street. Ravi's scream echoed in my ears, a chilling reminder of the friend I left behind. Shame battled with the primal urge to survive. Stumbling out of the alleyway, I leaned against the rough brick wall, gasping for breath. The deserted street stretched before me, the silence broken only by the distant rhythmic thump emanating from within the hostel. My gaze darted around, searching for something, anything, that could help. The rickety phone booth at the corner was useless, the line likely dead. My phone, my only source of light throughout the ordeal, had died during the struggle in the room. "Help!" I croaked, my voice hoarse. But the only response was the mournful howl of a stray dog in the distance. Panic clawed at my throat. I was alone, the sole witness to a horrific night, with no way to warn anyone. Suddenly, a flicker of movement in the pharmacy window caught my eye. A lone figure, a woman with short silver hair, stood behind the counter, her face itched with concern. Desperate, I stumbled towards the door, the heavy glass feeling cold and unforgiving against my shaking hands. It was locked, the familiar neon closed sign glowing defiantly. "Help me!" I screamed, banging on the glass with my fists. "There's something in the hostel." The woman hesitated, her eyes widening in alarm before vanishing from sight. A glimmer of hope flickered in my chest, quickly extinguished by the thought of a lone shopkeeper facing an unknown horror. Moments stretched into agonizing eternity. Just when I was about to give up, the door clicked open. The woman, her face a mask of apprehension, peered out at me. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice surprisingly calm. I stumbled back, gasping for breath. "There's a creature in the hostel. It killed my friends." The words tumbled out in a torrent, punctuated by choked sobs. The woman's gaze softened. "Come inside," she said, ushering me into the warm, brightly lit pharmacy. "Tell me everything." The fluorescent lighting of the pharmacy felt harsh after the oppressive darkness of the night. The woman, her name tag identified her as Anjali, fussed over me, offering a glass of water and a warm blanket. As I sat huddled in a corner chair, tears still clinging to my lashes, the weight of the night's events began to settle in. "Tell me everything," Anjali repeated, her voice gentle yet firm. Taking a deep breath, I recounted the night's horrors, from the deserted street to the encounter with Amma, the terrifying growl in the alleyway, and finally, the escape through the crawl space. Anjali listened intently, her brow furrowed in concentration. When I finished, a heavy silence descended upon the room, broken only by the soft hum of the refrigerator. "You said the creature came from between the places?" she finally asked, her voice a low murmur. "Amma, the old woman from the alleyway," I confirmed. "She called them things that crawl out from the places between." Anjali nodded slowly, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "There are stories," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Whispers passed down through generations about beings that exist in the spaces between worlds, attracted by negativity, by fear." My blood ran cold. Stories. Were we not talking about a monstrous creature that had just devoured my friends? But what can we do?" I stammered, my voice laced with despair. Anjali stood up, her posture radiating a quiet strength. "We can try. These creatures, they are vulnerable to light, to the pure energy of positive emotions. And perhaps she trailed off, her gaze flickering towards a shelf behind the counter. Perhaps what? I pressed, a glimmer of hope flickering in my chest. Anjali moved towards the shelf, her movements purposeful. She picked up a small, intricately carved wooden box, its surface adorned with strange symbols. These are, well, they're not exactly something I usually sell, she admitted, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. Curiosity battled with caution. What are they? I asked, eyeing the box warily. Let's just say, Anjali replied, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, they help focus positive energy. Maybe just enough to banish a creature from between the places. A reckless hope flared within me. Was this our only chance? Looking into Anjali's determined eyes, I knew I had no other choice. Let's do it, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. The night was far from over, but for the first time since the screams had shattered the silence, I felt a flicker of defiance. We might have been just a lone shopkeeper and a terrified witness, but armed with a wooden box and a desperate hope, we were ready to face the creature lurking between the places. Dawn had yet to break, painting the sky a bruised purple as we emerged from the pharmacy. Armed with a crowbar from behind the counter and Anjali's mysterious wooden box, we ventured back towards the hostel. The air hung heavy with an oppressive stillness, broken only by the rhythmic thumping that seemed to emanate from the building itself. Are you sure about this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Fear still gnawed at my insides, but it was overshadowed by a fierce determination to avenge Ravi and Priya. Anjali offered a reassuring smile, its warmth belying the grim situation. We have to be. These things feed on fear. We need to show it we're not afraid. The smell of putrefaction hung thick in the air as we approached the hostel. The once shut door now hung open on a broken hinge, swaying eerily in the pre-dawn breeze. My stomach lurched, a chilling premonition sending shivers down my spine. Stay close, Anjali whispered, her eyes scanning the dark interior. We tiptoed into the lobby, the silence broken only by the creak of our footsteps on the dusty floorboard. The air was thick with a metallic tang of blood and the stale scent of fear. Ravi, I called out, my voice echoing eerily in the empty hallway. No answer. Just the rhythmic thumping, growing louder with each passing moment. Anjali knelt beside a trail of bloody handprints leading towards the back of the building. She glanced up at me, her face grim. This way, she muttered, following the trail. We reached the back entrance, the one I'd used to climb in hours ago. The rusty fire escape was twisted and mangled, a testament to the creature's strength. Inside, the silence was deafening. Where is it? I'd whispered, my hand tightening around the crowbar. Anjali pointed towards the end of the dimly lit corridor where a faint, flickering red glow emanated from under a closed door. There, she said, her voice barely a whisper. But be careful, it feeds on fear. Taking a deep breath, I gripped the crowbar tighter. Let's do this. We reached the door, the rhythmic thumping growing into a deafening pounding now, seemingly coming from within the room. With a deep breath, I threw the weight of my body against the door. It groaned in protest but held firm. Let me try, Anjali said, stepping forward. She placed the wooden box on the floor, whispering something under her breath. The symbols on its surface seemed to glow faintly, an ethereal blue light that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. Then, with a swift movement, she smashed the box against the door. A blinding flash of light erupted, momentarily engulfing the corridor. The pounding from within ceased abruptly, replaced by a deafening screech that tore through the air. When the light faded, revealing a scene both horrific and strangely beautiful. The creature, its grotesque form illuminated in the blue light emanating from the shattered box fragments, thrashed in agony. The air crackled with a raw energy, and the shadows writhed as if in pain. Anjali seized the moment. "Now!" she yelled, channeling the blue light from the box fragments towards the creature. I joined her, raising my crowbar, not in attack, but in a defiant gesture, channeling every ounce of courage I possessed. The creature shrieked once more, a horrifying sound filled with pure, primal terror. Then, with a final, ear-splitting wail, it dissolved into a swirling vortex of black smoke. The smoke billowed outwards, swirling around the shattered fragments of the box before dissipating into nothingness. Silence descended, heavy and complete. We stood there for a long moment, catching our breath, the weight of the night slowly lifting from our shoulders. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, casting a soft glow on the blood-stained floor, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. The ordeal had taken its toll, leaving me drained both physically and emotionally. "It's over," Anjali said, her voice soft yet filled with a quiet strength. She placed a hand on my shoulder, offering a comforting squeeze. Overcome with emotion, I slumped against the wall, tears welling up in my eyes. It wasn't a perfect ending. Friends were lost, lives shattered. But amidst the grief, a flicker of hope remained. We had faced the creature from between the places, armed with nothing but determination and a strange wooden box. And we had won. Dawn crept in slowly, painting the blood-stained hallway with an ethereal pink glow. Exhaustion gnawed at my bones, a dull ache settling where terror had previously resided. Anjali stood beside me, her face etched with a mixture of relief and weariness. "We need to call the police," she said, her voice a low murmur. I nodded numbly. The enormity of the situation was slowly sinking in. The mangled fire escape, the eerie silence, the horrific scene behind the closed door. How were we going to explain any of it? Anjali knelt beside the shattered fragments of the wooden box, her fingers brushing against the glowing blue symbols. "What was in there?" I asked, curiosity overcoming the fog of exhaustion clinging to my mind. She glanced up at me, her eyes holding a hint of sadness. "It was a ward," she explained. "An object imbued with positive energy, a shield against creatures like that." "Like what?" I pressed, the chilling image of the creature flashing in my mind. Anjali took a deep breath. "There are things," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Beings from the spaces between realities, drawn to negativity, to fear. Stories whisper of them, of their ability to cross over, sometimes." I shivered despite the rising sun. The night's events, the creature, Alma's cryptic warnings, it all seemed to fit. But part of me balked at accepting such a fantastical explanation. The wail of sirens shattered the pre-dawn silence. Anjali rose to her feet, her eyes meeting mine. "We have a story to tell," she said, her voice firm. The following days were a blur of police questioning, horrified news reports, and the crushing weight of grief. The hostel was declared a crime scene, cordoned off with yellow tape. Ravi and Priya were gone, their faces plastered across news channels under the banner headline "Hostel Horror." Anjali and I stuck together, a strange bond forged in the crucible of that night. Explaining things to the police was a delicate dance, a carefully curated story of a break-in gone wrong. Thankfully, the creature itself vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the haunting emptiness of its absence. One evening, as we sat huddled in the warm glow of Anjali's pharmacy, the silence broken only by the soft clinking of pill bottles, I finally voiced the question that had been gnawing at me. "What now?" I asked. "Do those things, Will they come back? Anjali met my gaze, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. There's always a chance, she said, her voice soft yet resolute. But the world, it has its guardians, people who watch for things that go bump in the night. She reached into a drawer behind the counter and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden box, identical to the one we had used. And sometimes, she added, a hint of a smile playing on her lips, they need a little help from a friendly neighborhood pharmacist. Looking at the box, at Anjali's unwavering gaze, a sense of calm settled over me. The night terrors might linger, the loss of Ravi and Priya remain a gaping wound, but a seed of hope had been planted. There were things we didn't understand, things that lurked in the shadows. But we were not alone.